All right, hello everybody. Thank you so much for coming. We have Christina Pulsifer here to do a TED Talk on their Safety Net Foster program and a couple other things. So Christina, you are welcome to get started. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. So I'm Christina Pulsifer. I'm the Executive Director of Ruff Crisis Sheltering. We're located in Salt Lake City, and we opened our doors last June in the middle of the pandemic. So it's been kind of a wild ride since then. But basically, we provide, the temporary crisis sheltering for people going through a hardship. And then we've also kind of expanded our services to lots of other kind of pararetention services as well. So we are kind of unique in that we basically partner with a boarding facility. So one of our co-founders and our director of operations owns the facility. She and I met a few years ago, and so she's been fostering. She loves animal welfare, and based upon where her location is, it's in a very kind of transient area right off the freeway. We have a lot of unsheltered people there, so she had been approached several times anyway by people seeking assistance. So it was just kind of a natural partnership with that, and so we started just kind of getting our program on the ground and getting our feet under us just using the boarding, and then we have now grown into using foster. So that took about 3 months before we felt comfortable that we kind of knew what we were doing to be able to open it up to the foster support as well. And that's been, really helpful. I think it's been kind of it's a hard, challenging time, especially right now for organizations to gain fosters kind of just across the board. That's what we're hearing from all of our network partners as well. And I think, being in this kind of organization and work, sometimes it's a little challenging because it isn't a lot of times, the availability to possibly become a foster fail, Kelly and I were just talking about that, is very, very slim, right? And I think a lot of times fosters really love having the option of being able to, save animals or that are really sick or be able to do that. And so it is kind of a different environment to take in owned pets, which is a whole other kind of a thing. And so we kind of named it the foster sitters is what we call our fosters. So it kind of goes back to like, it's a foster, but it's also kind of a pet sitter, right? So we wanted to make it sort of this hybrid thing that you're kind of a long-term pet sitter for our clients as well. And, some people love this kind of fostering because the requirements are really minimal. They're not having to take them to adoption events all the time. They're not having to promote them and, that kind of a thing. So we have one foster who was doing traditional fostering, and she's just like, this is the best because I can just take some photos and send them and then we're good to go, right? There's not the commitment that sometimes goes along with traditional fostering. We do provide everything, of course, all food, supplies, all of that kind of a thing. All of the communication between the clients and the fosters goes through leadership. So we do not allow them to have direct communication with each other. That's just to protect privacy and boundaries. I'm a social worker. I'm a very rigid boundary monger. So that's something that I'm really careful with. We just don't want the clients to maybe feel judged or uncomfortable, or the fosters to feel like they're going to be asked to do something they wouldn't want to do. So the other benefit that we do have with having a boarding facility is that we can provide boarding when the foster goes out of town. So that's something we really try to promote as well, is that you can still go on vacation, you can still foster for us. We have a spot, available for the dog that you can come pick back up, or for the cat, we have a small cat room. And so I think that helps kind of manage being able to have fosters. So I really think having an option, right, for people to still be able to do what they need to do has been a big benefit for us in recruitment. Social media is big for us. We are in a large metropolitan area, so we have a lot of tools at our disposal, such as Facebook, Nextdoor, things like that. Another area that we've just kind of started using that's been really successful is actually like influencers and on Instagram and things like that. So we fortunately had a very popular dog account here in Salt Lake find us and share some of our stuff. And she shared a foster call that we had put out. And that day we got 5 applications for fosters, which was pretty amazing. And we have 3 dogs currently in foster from those 5. So we met with her actually on Friday for lunch to kind of talk a little bit about how we can maybe utilize that sort of realm a little bit more. And that has been successful. We're still a small organization, so and we're all volunteers. So we have 2 foster sitter coordinators, one that kind of oversees cats and one that oversees dogs, both with tremendous experience in animal welfare. And they're great. They're super available. We, we coordinate a lot with them. And, so our fostering is a little bit more long-term. A lot of times it can be 60 to 90 days. So we really try to make that clear when we're going into this. I would say probably our biggest challenge, of course, we all get attached to our fosters, right? So when it's time for them to go home, especially when it's longer term, that's been kind of a challenge. And we, really have just a lot of open conversations with our fosters and try to assess where they're feeling. And if we're talking, if they're going to have a really difficult time returning this foster, then, we may bring them back into the facility or things like that, and just make it clear that our goal always is reunification with the owner, and that may shift. So we have had some situations, of course, where the owners are not going to be in a position to be able to reunify with their pets. We always give the fosters first dibs on the animal, I guess, if you will, and then if not, then we'll kind of move forward with a private rehoming situation so that we can prevent them from going into the shelter. And we've had a lot of success with that as well. So I think that's kind of our program in a nutshell. I would say we probably only have maybe 15 to 20 active fosters right now. Again, like I said, we've got about 55 animals at any given time in our organization. So we're kind of still small, but we're growing, and we're the only and first organization like this in Salt Lake. So it's been a lot of learning experience, but we have a lot of support from our shelter and rescue partners as well. And we have a formal MOU with the Humane Society here. So we provide all of our spay and neuters for free, which is big, and vaccines, things like that. So we're able to kind of work with them. And in fact, we have several of their staff who foster for us because hourly staff can't foster for their own organization. So they come and foster for us, which has been great. So I think that's it in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions or anything else you want me to expand on.
Awesome. So we'll open up to questions, but just my first one was on recruitment. Like, is there any particular messaging that you use or ways that you use? I love to hear that Instagram influencers, or just influencers, have been helpful, because I feel like we in animal welfare don't do that as much as we could probably. But is there any particular messaging? How are you finding your fosters?
Yeah, I definitely think our first one is social media. We definitely recommend that our current volunteers and fosters, post on Nextdoor and share and word of mouth and things like that. We follow a lot of Kelly's tips and things like that as well, right? Is try to turn a lot of the social media posts into fostering and keep that dialogue really going. Let's see, the influencer thing was it wasn't even really fully even on our radar. So it just sort of happened organically. And then I thought, oh, wow, this is actually an untapped kind of area that we could be going into. So her account is very dog focused. We kind of joked about, we need like a cat friendly Salt Lake City account too, and some things like that. So we really do just focus on the fact that we are able to have anyone in any kind of situation help. Our first foster sitter was actually a firefighter who had been rejected by all of the other organizations because his schedule was so untraditional. He was 2 days on, 4 days off. So because we have that boarding facility, he would be able to kind of come back and forth and use as needed. And he still fosters for us. So he has a dog with us right now. That started a year ago. So I think that is a benefit that we have that probably other organizations aren't able to have. But, if you do have a shelter or physical location, that could be something to really kind of promote is the non-traditional sort of sheltering. So we got lucky with him in that he got rejected by everyone else. And we had another foster who the rescue that she wanted to try to foster for required that they have a Facebook account. And she was a senior who did not use Facebook, and she could not foster for them. So we were able to take her. We're very low barrier. We don't require people to have, Facebook, electronics, all of that kind of stuff. We really try to be our organization goal is to help and assist clients that are, without barriers. And so we kind of, instead of adopters welcome, it's fosters welcome, and sort of doing that sort of shift as well. So kind of opening up to, not having a lot of restrictions and requirements has helped.
That's awesome. Do any of you have questions?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on Kelly's questions, how do you decide I don't know Instagram really well, but I think I know what is Instagram influencers, and how do you go about decided who to ask? Like, do you look at their Instagram and what kind of Instagram they have, and how do you make that decision?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think for us, a lot of the people on our team have their own Instagram accounts, right? Or love pets or things like that. So I think the best thing just is to start following people that you maybe like a lot of the other rescues, other people that you may personally follow. This particular influencer, her whole thing is about dog friendly areas in Salt Lake and how to, and so she posts about a lot of events and things like that. So I think just organically sort of starting to follow, you don't want to like just rush in, right? And start approaching people that have no idea what you do. One of the things she said about us is that she gets a lot of requests from nonprofits and stuff like that to follow. And so she had checked out like our website and things like that. And she's like, okay, you guys have a legitimate website, right? It looks like you have a strong, active team. I see what you guys are doing on Instagram and that you have good content, right? So you want to make sure that what you're putting out and publicizing is also strong, and you're kind of developing that relationship. And I think, again, she had some followers that had liked our organization and were following us. So I would say start with following and interacting with some of the influencers first, like in a very genuine way. And then that will kind of grow, and then you can kind of approach them. It's sort of like any other sort of sponsorship or relationship that you're going to want to cultivate. Yeah.
So is the influencer a volunteer, or
she's her own thing? She's got her own account doing her own thing, and she just wanted to support our organization. So she started sharing our content and shared that call out for fosters, which, like I said, it was really successful. And and then I started communicating with her behind the scenes more, and invited her out to lunch, and started developing that too. And we also, our board chair is the social media and communications manager for the Humane Society. So she knows a lot of people in our area and what they're doing. And we actually have a couple of other influencers who found us last year, just doing like on Google, who were just wanted to do like a donation drive, and they have become major supporters. They've volunteered at our vaccination clinics. They helped us, get donations for our big events, things like that. So
I have two more questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying that the fostering period, you have a definite, like it's somewhere between 60 and 90 days, right? Mm-hmm. But the minimum is 60.
The minimum could be 3 days, really. I mean, it really just depends. Like we try to get kind of a feel for what the timeline is going to be. So if we know someone's going into the hospital for a week, we're not going to put that animal into foster care. But if it's looking like it's going to be 30 days, 60 days, that kind of a thing, we will. You know, we honestly, we do have that sort of that timeline, and we have our policies in place, but we're also, I'm big on being trauma informed. And so we will individualize services. Sometimes we've had pets in our care for 5 months. Really just depends, right? Housing is such a difficult situation right now across the board. And so if we've got a family living in a homeless shelter who's on the housing voucher list, but just has not been able to get a place, we're not going to kick their animals out after 60 days. So we'll just continue to work with them, work with their case management and their team, and you know, just kind of assess, as long as they're making progress towards that housing goal, we're willing to kind of extend the time. But if it's just sort of been, oh, I'm kind of looking for 60 days, you know, it's like, okay, we've got to come up with an exit plan at this point. So
and the other question is, so you're working with a boarding facility, just like any old regular boarding facility, right? It
right.
just,
Yeah. So, and we actually just made a connection again somewhere on Instagram. An owner of another boarding facility saw us and reached out and was like, how can we help you guys? And so we went to go tour their facility, and now they are willing to house dogs for us potentially if we don't have space at our facility. So if you can also kind of like network or use, you know, a lot of rescues have like saved kennels a lot in boarding facilities. So it's something similar to that.
so is this just free? I mean, they just board, wow, just for free.
All of our services are free. So we do not require, you know, again, but Marissa, my partner, she's very passionate about this, and we're actually in the process of merging the boarding facility into Ruff Haven. So that will become a for-profit arm of how we can continue to fund the nonprofit. So we're in the works. So
that's, yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, that's great. Wow. Okay. Yeah, thank you. It's that's super cool concept. I really like it. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else? Questions? One question. It is from talking to another organization that did a lot of safety net foster for people who are victims of domestic violence and things like that. And one thing that she mentioned was that it was hard. They saw a high number of pets that had, you know, different behaviors because of the fact that they, you know, come from trauma backgrounds. And so I just wondered if that was something you've seen and like how you might be approaching it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. We had one situation that sticks out in my mind, that there was like a mom and a dad dog and then puppies, and you know, they were not in good behavioral condition at all. We had the owner surrendered actually 2 of the puppies to the Humane Society because that was not a situation we were willing to kind of step into. I think one of them did end up having to be euthanized just due to really aggressive behaviors that could not, you know, be managed. So, you know, fortunately, we kind of have some relationships with some trainers and things like that, you know, and long-term boarding is definitely really tough. So we were constantly sort of evaluating the animals and their mental health and, you know, what's going on with them. We've got a lot of volunteers that come out and you know, walk dogs and take them on field trips and things like that. But we really try not to take dogs that cannot live and be out in open play because of the deterioration that we will see in long-term boarding. So the female that we ended up taking, you know, was successful. She did renate with mom, but and then we also did take one of the puppies. So there were 3 puppies, and we were able to like really socialize that dog. And you know, the Humane Society saw him for a neuter and was like, oh my gosh, this is a completely different dog. So in some of those situations, we work with some of our just trainers and behavioral staff. We have a volunteer that has a lot of training knowledge and background. So, but that's definitely a concern, is, you know, that they're not in good situations, they're being exposed to violence and you know, things like that. So I think just trying to partner and find someone that can kind of come in and assess is going to be the best option for that. And having honestly, like, really just honest, open, transparent conversations with the owners. I'm really big on that, and telling them what you are really seeing and how we're going to kind of, you know, are they going to be set up for success, and are they going to be in a position to be able to manage these kind of behaviors when they're reunified, and have that. So I think that's going to be helpful too.
Sorry if I missed it and you said, but do you send those cases to foster?
We will. That particular situation, we did not. They were in our shelter just because we had more access to be able to kind of work with them individually at that point. I would say that's really the only one that we've had that was a pretty significant kind of behavior issues that we've seen. I think only about 10% of our clientele is due to domestic violence issues. There is another organization outside of Park City here that is specifically dedicated for domestic violence, and they've been around for about 7 years. They have a pretty rigorous kind of eligibility requirement, so we kind of fill in the gaps for that. And they take in about 40 animals a year. They actually had a situation with some dogs that went to them first and they weren't able to manage it. So then they came to us and we were able, because we have a daycare, the dog was very kennel aggressive, would react to being put in a kennel. And we were just able to keep him out in daycare, open play, didn't have to go in a kennel, and that was able to solve that issue. And he didn't stay with us at night, just, it was during the day. So, it's definitely tough and you have to be kind of creative with that. But I think we definitely would send dogs to foster that, weren't aggressive and kind of get them to be, or cats, but we see that more with dogs.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Since these dogs have owners, as opposed to the lots of foster situation where they don't, are they allowed to visit their dog during fostering?
Yeah, of course. So we ask not to do cats just because of, we tell them that right up front that if it's cats, we won't do visits because of the stress of traveling and so forth. And with dogs, we'll allow once a month, and then they can bring them, the foster can drop them off at our facility and then the owner can pick up and that kind of a thing. So we definitely want to encourage visitation. We feel like that's really, really important to kind of preserve that bond, not only for the animal, but for the owner. We do a required weekly check-in for the owner, just a simple text message template that tells us how they're doing. And, that kind of keeps us on track, but also it sort of keeps that connection. Once you start living your life without your pet for 3 months, sometimes I think it's a little bit easy to sort of get into a new routine and not be, having them in your life. So it's a little bit easier to not, to say, this isn't working and we're not going to be able to have them back. So we have a situation where we have been requiring visits because this pet was not with them for a few months prior to coming to us. They were in another private foster situation. And we were really concerned about, are we just prolonging the inevitable sort of a thing, right? And so we need you to come and visit your animal in order to make sure that bond is still happening. And we especially find that particularly for the domestic violence, families, if they're able to come.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, Christina, can't thank you enough for coming today. Really, really appreciate everything that you've
Thank you for having me. I always wish I could pop in all these calls, but like I said, I'm a volunteer too, and I've got 70 million things going on. So I appreciate you, and I think this is such a great resource.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but I'm sure that either way.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I've got to go run to actually a meeting appointment. So
okay, cool.
All right. Thank you so much. It's great to meet you.
You too.